Can I ask you first about Romeo as a character? I mean, the traditional first reading would be that he's kind of a spoilt, young, affluent male who seems to have everything. He's one of the most powerful families in the city, and he's, you know, dreamily in love with Rosalind, and then he changes almost overnight, and the second that he sees another girl, he goes with her. So he mightn't be that attractive a character. So really, I suppose what I'm asking you is, did you like Romeo? Do you like him as a character?
I did. I fell in love with Romeo. From the first reading, from the first initial talks that we had, we were guilty of doing the same thing as just thinking that he was kind of a melancholic, kind of childish, depressed young man. But the more and more I rehearsed Romeo, the more and more I researched his character, I felt connected to him in such a way. And what is really interesting from an actor's point of view for Romeo is that he's in 4 to 5 scenes, in 4 to 5 acts in the play, and each act he is almost completely different. So with the first act he is quite depressed, but suddenly he will change to being madly in love. The second act, he's madly in love, but he's also madly in love with his friends, with Benvolio and Mercutio. And then the third act, we see him completely destroyed after the banishment. We see him, how he reacts to all these things. We see how he reacts to leaving Juliet. We see how his love has kind of matured in the third act. And the fifth act, we see the desperate, the driven by the need to kind of be with Juliet, but the need for happiness again. And we see that very clearly in the fifth act. And it's an actor's dream to be able to play a different emotion every time he walks out into a scene. Romeo is driven by his need for happiness, I think. I don't think it's love. Love is there, but love is encompassed in the happiness. I think, like everybody else, Romeo just wants to be happy. We see that in the first scene, that he is not happy. He's depressed, and he feels like he's been done wrong by this Rosalind girl. He thinks that he's done everything right, but she's just not accepted him. But then throughout the play, we see that when he is happy, he is an absolute joy to read. He's an absolute joy to watch.
There's that beautiful speech he has, which I love, at the beginning of Act 5, isn't it?
Act 5, yeah.
On his own in Mantua. Say that one to us. It's a gorgeous summary of how he is when he's happy.
If I may trust the flattering truth of sleep.
My dreams presage some joyful news at hand. My bosom's lord sits lightly in his throne, and all this day and all the customed spirit lifts me high above the ground with cheerful thoughts. I dreamt my lady came and found me dead. Strange dream that gives a dead man leave to think. And breathed such life with kisses in my lips that I revived and was an emperor.
Ah me, how sweet is love itself possessed, when but love's shadows are so rich in joy.
It's the first time he mentions joy.
Yeah.
And he does seem to have it. And I think that's really important speech to put at the top of that act, because immediately he finds out that she's dead. We remember that he has a moment of contented joy. I mean, that's a bit of an oxymoron, but certain joy before that, and he's not going to give that up. He's going to kill himself rather than go back to the depression.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main things that you see with Romeo. It's like you said, we talked about this loads of times, but he doesn't kill himself to be with Juliet in the afterlife.
We think.
Our interpretation would be that we've talked about this so much that we genuinely believe that it isn't just to be with Juliet. Maybe it's there. It's in the back of his head that if he dies and she's dead, that they will be together. But I think he is not going back to the first scene.
Yeah,
he is not. Yeah. And I think he's invested more in Juliet because obviously they've had troubling relationship, and they have had a serious relationship.
Even though it was like 2 days.
Yeah,
or
it
something.
was 2 days. It was a short relationship.
Enlightening. It's such a transformation.
Yeah.
Tell me, and wherefore? The orchard wall is high and hard to climb, and the place death considering who thou art.
With love's light wings did I o'erperch these walls. For stony limits cannot hold love out, and what love can do that dares love attempt. Therefore, thy kinsmen are no let to me.
They do see thee, they will murder thee.
Alack, there lies more peril in thine eyes than 20 of their swords. Look thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity.
Oh, and not for the world they saw thee here.
I have night's cloak to hide me from their eyes. And but thou love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death prorogued wanting of thy love.
By whose direction foundest thou out this place?
By love, that first did prompt me to inquire. He lent me counsel, and I lent him eyes. I am no pilot, yet wert thou as far as the vast shore washed with the farthest sea, I should adventure for such merchandise.
How did you normalize the character of Romeo? Because when you think about that transformation that happens like that, he sees her, he's in love, he goes over the orchard wall, he woos her in his old courtly way until she becomes very pragmatic and says, oh, swear not by the moon, and I have no joy in this contract tonight. He kind of wises up to that, and up until that point he's been very verbal, and then he becomes something real. How did you normalize this character, you, an 18-year-old?
Yeah. When talking about this, people make it out that it's a massive and difficult task to normalize this character, when really every teenage boy has gone through what he's gone through. Not it, like, just the love, kind of, and completely enticed by this one girl, and then straight away the minute you see another one, you're over there.
Really,
it's normal. It's people don't realize that what he is going through, and this massive transition is a completely normal thing. It may be not, right, fair enough, you might be a little bit dramatic about the whole thing, maybe.
But do you think then that you're saying, or is that saying that his love for Juliet is as fleeting and as insubstantial as his love for Rosalind, that he'd go on to someone else?
At the start, I think it is.
Okay.
But I think, as I said previously, that his love matures throughout the play. And it's really, really, really evident in Act 4, Scene 1, when he has to leave her. And, like, the Romeo that you would have known at the start of the play, if he was in danger, he would have been like, no, I'll do it for love. But he knew he was in danger. So he said, I must be gone and live, or stay and die. He's matured about it. He's saying, look, I want you and I want to be with you, but I can't risk staying here. And this whole thing where Juliet asks him, will they ever meet again? And he says, I doubt it not. I genuinely believe that he does believe that they will see each other again.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And that's another thing. It's the love that he has for her has given him hope, has inspired him to believe in his relationship, his own abilities, to get her back and to bring her and to have a life together. It's really strong, his belief.
It's very interesting that after he matures, as you say, and even though he believes Juliet is dead, one of the most interesting scenes occurs with the apothecary, where he addresses something political, and we were always very interested in this scene, where he says to this poor wretch of a human that basically he's saying the world is full of your kind, and if you don't get up and do something about it, you pretty much deserve to be that poor.
Art thou so bare and full of wretchedness, and fierce to die? Famine is in thy cheeks, need and oppression starveless in thine eyes. Contempt and beggary hangs upon thy back. The world is not thy friend, nor the world's law. The world affords no law to make thee rich, then be not poor, but brave, and take this.
My poverty, but not my will consent.
I pay thy poverty and not thy will.
Take this. Put it in any liquid thing you will, drink it off. If you had the strength of 20 men, scotch you straight.
There is thy gold, worse poisons to men's souls, doing more murder in the loathsome world than these poor compounds than thou mayst that thou mayst not sell. I sell thee poison thou hast sold me no. Farewell! Buy food and get thyself some flesh.
He is channeling his own sense of injustice at the world and at how things have panned out, and opens his eyes to the way society is structured.
And it's almost a foreshadowing of he puts his desperation onto the apothecary. He's saying, look, you're so desperate and you're still afraid to die. And then when he's talking to Paris outside the tomb, he's like, tempt not a desperate man. So what's really interesting in this scene is that Romeo is just as desperate as the apothecary,
but he's going to act.
Yeah, he lets on that he's not, and he's going to do it.
That's right. Romeo is going to do something about it. He's going to take action, whereas the apothecary is just wasting away, doing nothing. So that was an interesting moment. And were there any other interesting scenes for you with Romeo that you thought revealed something about the character that we may not have necessarily thought of before?
Yeah, well, I think there's interesting moments with his father. He doesn't have any scenes with his father. He doesn't mention his father very much. But when he does mention his father, it's at three very, very important points in the play. It's when we first meet Romeo, which is a massive moment, and he seems angry. He says, was that my father who went hence so fast? He seems kind of like
disappointed.
Yeah, he seems a bit disappointed that his father isn't trying to talk to him.
Even though the father says he did.
He tried to counsel him by any means, and
it's classic father-son stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And that's going back to the whole thing. Romeo is extremely normal.
Yeah,
compared to everything
the
else.
father says, that he's closed up and secretive, and any attempts that he makes to talk to him, the son just further retreats into his own world. But Romeo obviously wants him to talk to him and keep trying.
Of course. And then the last scene when Balthazar's coming and he sees him from afar and he's asking him all these questions and excitement because he hasn't heard from Balthazar, he hasn't heard from anyone. So he asks about the friar, which is completely normal because him and the friar have such a strong relationship. He of course asks about Juliet twice, but he also asks about his father. And he doesn't ask a glooming question about his father. He says, is my father well? Before rehearsal, me and you would have long discussions about possibly the scene coming up or how the character is in the scene, and that was probably the most beneficial thing for learning and understanding the character, and obviously to talk about it, to give my opinion and have my opinion like changed or maybe altered. And then I did a lot of research by myself on the kind of the academic point of view. I felt that really useful this time around, actually, with a classical character. I read a lot about lecturers in college writing theses about about the play and about the character, and just reading some really interesting points of view. And like, I didn't necessarily just take from them, but I took them on board, and I maybe agreed with them, I disagreed with them, I thought that was a good point or that was a bad point, but there was a lot about just kind of understand, and I think understanding the age was a massive thing as well. It was an important part of being able to perform the character and understanding that the character is not me, but I've felt the same things that the character maybe has gone through. And it was in rehearsal we'd be trying out maybe an intense moment like a banishment scene or something, and there was just interesting things like bringing my own kind of emotions to it. But it was just...
Can you give an example?
Well, the banishment scene would be probably the strongest, because I felt from reading the banishment scene that he needed to be quite emotional, but he needed to be emotional like a child would be emotional, because he's having a little bit of a tantrum. He is having a tantrum, and it's clearly evident throughout the lines. So I needed to make sure that it wasn't like a soft cry. It needed to be dramatic. I'm out there, I'm going to get tickets. It had to be very physical as well.
And to understand banishment, you applied what banishment might actually mean to you.
Yeah, there was certain things that I needed to understand. Like the banishment obviously was a massive thing to this character. Banishment to me would be being put into the British Army, being sent to Afghanistan, knowing that I might come back with a leg blown off or I might come back in a casket.
This is dear mercy, and thou seest it not.
'Tis torture and not mercy. Heaven is here, where Juliet lives. And every cat and dog and little mouse, every unworthy thing may live here in heaven and may look on her. But Romeo may not. More validity, more honourable state, more courtship lives in carrion flies than Romeo. They may seize on the white wonder of dear Juliet's hand, and steal immortal blessing from her lips, who even in pure and vestal modesty still blush as thinking their own kiss is sin.
In terms of identifying, I mean, we spent so long rehearsing. You know, you live with this character for so long, from October through to May. What impact did that have on you as a young person, of being in the world of Shakespeare, thinking about it so often and so long?
Yeah, it affected me more than any other role that I've ever done. When I say I've lived with Romeo since October, I have lived with Romeo since October. He has been my roommate. He has been everywhere. He's like a shadow following me, because I'd sit down and I'd be having dinner and people might be talking, or I might just be on my own watching television, and I'd tune out for a second and I'd be thinking about Romeo. And it was really weird, and it affected me in that it changes your views on things. It really changed my view on love, teenage love, puppy love, all them things. From particularly doing Romeo and Juliet, I've learned that there's different forms of love, and you cannot say that one is more valid than the other. So if someone says, it's just puppy love, like, you cannot say, it's just puppy love. Puppy love could be not serious one day, and then the next day it could be extremely serious. He taught me personality traits as well, and things that I could take on board, or things that I don't like in a person, or maybe, and all them things. And he was extremely beneficial, not just to do as an actor, but for someone to live with.
So he didn't teach you any chat up lines then?
No, not exactly.
No.
It helps though.
And what about the over? Is there anything in Romeo that you think might generally be overlooked when studying him, or perhaps even performing him?
Well, what was really
as an older male, but now as somebody who's more or less his age.
Yeah. Well, I never actually studied Romeo and Juliet in third year. I did an Irish play, so I actually didn't have the chance to know the play like everybody else. So I don't know how teachers go about teaching Romeo and Juliet, but I can see that there is definitely certain things. His relationship with the father might not be significant. His different forms of love throughout the play, I think, it might be a massive thing that people need to understand as well, that Romeo doesn't just show love for Juliet. He shows love for the friar.
Mercutio.
For Mercutio and Benvolio, it's probably it's one of the nicest things that you can see about Romeo. He genuinely loves his friends.
And the nurse.
And yeah, he has, and yeah, you see completely different things, like how happy he is. And
I think that's true about the quest for happiness. It's not so much about love, it's the quest for happiness that drives him, and that's often overlooked. I suppose other aspects of him that don't get a lot of attention are his intelligence, his witty repartee, the fact that Mercutio can't actually keep up with him in that scene about the goose. Did you follow me with the goose? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, because when you first meet Mercutio, I think the crowd really loved the introduction of Mercutio, because they're burdened with these two sad, depressed characters in Benvolio and Romeo.
Because Benvolio is also
Benvolio won't talk to Romeo as well. He's like, his father has to make a promise to Romeo's father that he will speak to him.
But Benvolio has said that when he's out walking, he himself has been under some burden, and he sees Romeo and he doesn't want to go near him because he doesn't want to draw himself down further. He's far enough down as it is. So what about any scene in the play, I mean, that we've just done, that you're particularly proud of, or that you like, or that's that you thought that was good or interesting in the staging of it, in the coming off of it?
I think probably the scene that is when he meets Mercutio and Benvolio after he's been with Juliet, when the nurse comes in and he speaks to the nurse. I think I'm particularly proud of that scene because the way we captured it was that Romeo is an extremely funny, an extremely intelligent, and an extremely caring person as well.
You gave us the counterfeit fairy last night.
Good morrow to you both. What counterfeit did I give you?
The slip, sir, the slip. Can you not conceive?
Pardon me, Mercutio. My business was great, and in such a case as mine, a man may strain courtesy.
And he above all, he does care for people, and he cares for his friends very much. And as I was saying, like, everybody loves Mercutio because I think Mercutio is a massive, like, hilarious character. But then we see Romeo, he can't keep up with Romeo when he needs to.
And we showed in that one that Mercutio probably had a crush of some kind on Romeo, in our version anyway. You can clearly not do it that way. There's no great justification for it, but it's there. You can justify it. That Mercutio is slightly in love with him. You know, that's how we chose to perform it, because as we saw in a lot of Shakespeare's comedies anyway, and some of the tragedies, the young men are very much in love with themselves, in love with being with each other, testing out the idea of love before they meet the woman, like in Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing. Yeah. Benedict and Beatrice, the same sort of scenario is there. That Shakespeare has this kind of pattern he repeats in some plays where young men kind of fancy each other a little bit or fall in love with each other as a way of driving their needs or testing out their needs before the real love.
It's like a foundation.
Along. A foundation for real love. That's kind of school for real love.
Comes in shape no larger than an agate stone on the forefinger of an alderman, drawn by a team of little atomies over men's noses as they lie asleep. Her chariot is an empty hazelnut, made by the joiner, squirrel, or old grub. Time out of mind, the fairy's midwife. Her wagon spokes of long spinner's legs. Her cover, the wings of a grasshopper. Her collar is of the smallest spider's web. Her traces of the moonshine's watery beams, her lash of cricket's bone, her whip of film, her wagoner, a small grey-coated gnat, not half so big as a round little worm plucked from the lazy finger of a maid. And in this state she gallops, night by night, through lovers' brains, and then they dream of love.
Why is this play important? Is it important?
Yeah.
Why is it important?
Well, not just to the fact that it's extremely entertaining, and it's probably the basis of, well, not the basis, but it's modern day's basis of Twilight, things like that, Twilight, anything, Star-Crossed Lovers, this whole thing. But it's more complex than that. It's really important for teenagers to read this play and understand the complexity of these characters. That Romeo is not a character that's in a healthy state of mind. He really isn't. Like he figures that the only way out of depression is suicide at the end of it. He doesn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. It is an extremely important play. It should be a Leaving Cert text as well, because never mind the fact that it's one of his longer ones, but it's the complexity of each character. It's an important play to study in school because, above all, it should be taught in the way that this is entertainment. This is a play. It should be taught to students as if it was a play, not that it's a text that you need to learn it. It should be taught like, isn't this really interesting? Imagine putting this up on stage, and imagine just it's just really, really, really interesting to watch, but learn about as well.
Did my heart love until now? Forswear its sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night.